One hot August evening, alongside the cliffs of the town of Oyashirazu in Niigata Prefecture, a man on his way back home from a long camping trek took a glance at the splashing tides, only to notice a most unnerving sight. A woman, wet from the water, sitting on a rock and seemingly clutching tightly to a baby wrapped in a bundle. Without hesitation, the man hurriedly made his way for her, wondering if she needed any help, thinking if she had gotten lost, abandoned, or maybe even just survived a shipwreck. As he approached her, she was visibly in distress and asked him if he could hold her baby for a moment. Naturally, he took it. He then immediately saw that there was no baby in the bundle, as it suddenly increased in weight, so profoundly heavy that he could not let go. He became pinned to the rock, unable to move, when he felt an immense pressure squeezing him from all sides, caused by the immeasurably long snake-like body of the wet woman wrapping around him. He took one last look at her, now wearing a malicious smile, as she bared her fangs and extended her long, forked tongue. Then, it was over. Another victim, taken by the Nure Onna. Nure Onna, directly translating as a wet woman, is a yokai most commonly found in folktale traditions alongside the west coast of Japan. It visually made appearances in some of the most notable illustrated collections of yokai of the Edo period, including Yokai Zukan from 1737 by Sawaki Sushi and the 1776 Gazuhyaki Yagyo by Toriyama Sekien. Both depicted the creature as possessing the head of a woman with a snake-like tongue and an extremely long, serpentine body. However, where she differed was in Toriyama's depiction. She possessed arms, unlike the earlier illustration by Sawaki. The length of her body was once described as 3 cho, according to the old Japanese measurement system, which equaled to around 327 meters, or over 10,070 feet. She was also described as being so long that her body could stretch from one town to another. Even though she is many times stronger than a human, she prefers to lure people within her reach with trickery by looking distressed and holding onto a seeming baby bundled in a blanket. Depending on the folk tales, the yokai would stay near the water with her baby, tempting unsuspecting people to help her, or she would be calmly washing her hair, and if others were to come up to her, she would get angered by their intrusion and smite them. If a person were to take her bundle, they would find that it was not a baby, but a bunch of rocks, which would grow as heavy as a boulder, trapping them. The yokai would take this opportunity to kill them by drinking their blood through its forked tongue. Some say that if a person were wearing gloves, they could slip their hands out of them and then run to make their escape. Their true intentions are not known, but can be assumed that they solely feed on human flesh to sustain themselves. The common appearance of a woman's head attached to a snake-like body seemed to imply that it was a well-known description of the Nure Onna, but there is a notable absence of the yokai's presence in written literature of the time. According to the 1929 collection of essays, Yokai Gaten Zenshu, or Discussion on Yokai Pictures by Fujisawa Morihiko, there was a written account of an encounter with Nure Onna dating back to 1819, even though there were no primary sources for this tale. The event took place on a riverside on the border of Echigo Province and Aizu in western Japan. The story concerned a group of young men in several boats traveling to collect wood. After one boat was swept away, the men on board spotted a woman washing her hair in the water. Upon realizing that they were witnessing a villainous yokai in the flesh, they screamed and rowed their boats away from her to reunite with the rest of their group. The other men waiting for the misplaced boat claimed to see a large snake in the water, while the ones who had been swept away confirmed that it was much worse than just a snake. It was the Nure Onna. The men in the other boats laughed the claim off, and instead made their way in the direction of the woman in the water. Despite desperate pleas for them to stop from the men who had seen her first, the others did not change their course. The young men in the boat that had swept away turned back and fled the area, leaving the others behind, screaming in the distance. Those who did not flee the area were entangled by the Nure Onna's body and were never heard from again. Even though in many accounts the Nure Onna works alone, there is another telling of her tale which shows her as being in allegiance with another monster of the sea. In Shimane Prefecture in southwestern Japan, she would lure unsuspecting travelers near the seaside and trap them underneath her baby-like bundle, at which point an Ushi Oni, or ox demon, would appear from the water. There are many different types of Ushi Oni across Japan, ranging in behavior and appearance, but the one found in Kyushu, working together with the Nure Onna, is like a giant spider, possessing 6 legs, each ending with a single claw, and an ox-like head with horns. Both the Nure Onna and Ushi Oni would feast on the person together. There is another yokai which bears a striking resemblance to the Nure Onna, which is the Iso Onna, or coast woman, encountered in Kyushu, southwestern Japan. Unlike the Nure Onna, which in traditional illustrations is typically depicted as hideous in the face, the Iso Onna possesses a sultry, alluring face, with her long wet hair hugging her body. The biggest difference between the two is that she does not have a serpent-like body and appears to look like a normal woman from the waist up. From the waist down, the shape of her body becomes more obscure, cloudy, and partly transparent, which would in most encounters be under the water. When approached by humans, the Iso Onna shrieks out a blood-curdling scream which stuns the victim, who is then pulled into the water by her hair. When submerged, the yokai would suck out the person's blood through her hair. The extreme similarities between the two creatures seems to indicate that they originated from the same source, but after many generations, diverged in appearance and characteristics through repeated distortions of word of mouth. The basis of the story can be traced back to another yokai called Ubume, the first accounts of which dated back to around the 12th century ACE. Ubume is the ghostly form of a woman who died during childbirth, and would appear to passers-by as a woman in distress, possibly with her clothes drenched in blood, and holding her baby in her arms. She would look for someone to whom she would pass the baby, and then disappear. When the person looked down at the baby, they would see that it was nothing more than a bundle filled with leaves or rocks. The Nure Onna can be seen as the localized recreation of an already fairly common tale of a pregnant woman, taken before she could give birth, and cursed to return after death to the world of the living, forever looking for someone to help her and her baby. The adaptation of the basic characteristics of the Ubume to a giant serpentine monster adds to the likelihood of people approaching her as a woman and her child in suffering is indeed a difficult sight to ignore, which only goes to prove that, like in many things in life, appearances can sometimes be very deceiving.